morning, Professor Alaka Basu. We are so happy to have you at our fourth annual economics conference. Okay, so we are in an economics conference, and you're a sociologist. That's one incongruity. The second incongruity is your topic, which you're going to talk to us on your plenary session soon, is on men, work, and marriage. Whereas generally, as economists, we concentrate a lot on women, work, and marriage. So, what is the reason for your?
Yeah. So, for both the things, in the first case, yes, I'm an imposter. I'm not an economist. So, I'm here. I think by default, I got invited, but I'm very happy because actually, what was said this morning, that we need to be more interdisciplinary. So, I'm glad actually that you have people like me who are not economists,
sure.
And I'll of course learn a lot, but maybe also the economists hearing what demographers or sociologists or anthropologists are saying will get ideas for their own research. So I think that it's a very nice thing to actually have a few, not a whole session, but at least have a few people from outside the discipline for an economics conference.
Sure, ours is a very interdisciplinary university, so I'm sure they've thought a little bit before we said this. So again, to get back to the men and women, what is so different about men's work and women's work, in your opinion as a sociologist?
The thing is, I've always been interested in gender. I've tried to do a lot of work on gender, and most of it, not just mine, but most people who work on gender equate gender with women. So most of the work is on women, and especially in the context of labour force participation, and especially India, where it's been so low and coming down even further, and people are looking for all kinds of reasons, including just measurement errors, that we're not counting women's work correctly, or gender norms. I think there's a whole lot of economists now talking about social norms, which sociologists and demographers have been talking for a long time, but economists have now begun talking about how norms explain the low labour force participation. And then there is, of course, another group of economists and others who are talking about opportunities, that women don't have the opportunities to work. So there are so many things being said, that I think the conversation is still going on, and it's interesting. But I'm also interested in thinking about gender not as just about women, but as relations between men and women, and also thinking about the other side of gender, which is men. If I was truly a modern sociologist, I would include, in fact, all the other categories, the gays, the bisexuals, the intersex, etc. But for broadly speaking, the male versus female binary is already enough work for us. So I've thought that we really don't know enough about men and how their lives are playing out, especially how their lives are playing out in the changing economy that was talked about this morning. And we know that unemployment levels are high for women as well, and rising, especially for young men. And what does that mean for their lives? Political scientists have been talking a bit about that. All these big groups of young men hanging around without work, and what impact must it be having on them? We know, for example, actually I should have started with that we assume that in every aspect of life, men are doing better than women. But we know, for example, that all over the world, to take a most basic indicator, which is life expectancy, in fact, men do worse than women. So, and that's not just a biological thing, it's as socially constructed. The men's lives are built in a way that they take more risks, they're not supposed to go to get medical help, and they have more of the lifestyle related health issues, whether it's smoking or drinking or driving fast cars. So it's not that men, there are social expectations of men also which are bad for men, just as there are social expectations of women which are bad for women. So I have in recent months started feeling that it's not fair to talk only about women, and I should see what's happening to men. And I then got interested in this question of men and work, and as the paper I'm going to present is really about that male employment and some of the implications of the rising male unemployment. Because the women's issue is there, we're talking about it, we're continuing to worry about it, but there is a parallel problem going on in men's lives, which I think a lot of the social and political problems, not just in India, but all over the world, the former communist countries, Eastern Europe even now, but also Western Europe, there are a lot of problems going on in men's lives that perhaps are making things worse for women, but are also making things generally, I think they need a bit more sympathy. So I just thought I would want to focus on that.
Now the question of marriage. We all know what is the impact of this marriage on women's work. So what is the impact of marriage on men? As far as an economist, I have seen that the men's workforce participation remains sort of, in a straight line irrespective of age, whereas women's labor force participation often has two peaks. It goes away during reproductive ages and then it comes back again a little later.
So my paper today is actually not about the impact of marriage on men's employment, but the other way around. The impact of men's employment on their marriage prospects. So for women, this is the other thing. For women, we are talking about the impact of marriage on labor force participation, that on marriage they tend to withdraw, and that seems to be the common, very clearly seen in India. But here, for men, I don't think that is the issue. I'm looking at it from the opposite point of view. That in fact we now are more interested, women in particular, the big requirement they have for marriage is that the groom should have a job. So it's affecting their marriage prospects. So it's the opposite to that what I'm looking at right now.
No, that's very interesting because in some states at least we are seeing that normally at marriage the girls' education is less than the men's education. Now increasingly you are getting women higher educated, more high educated than the man, and they're making this marriage. How does that work?
I think what's happening is this is part of the. Well, I was going to say some of this there, but this is part of the same story that in fact education has become less of a marker of groom attractiveness, as more and more every second man now has a college degree. So and women are getting highly educated, and I think in fact that it's men's secure employment that has become the more important the characteristic that women are looking for in marriage. So if sometimes they have to exchange his education for his employment, they might be, so it's called status exchange, basically the sociology literature talks of in marriage, that they are willing to exchange his lower education level for his higher employment guarantee, if that is the case.
Wonderful. So now let me just ask you, you've been at this conference since yesterday. What do you think of the conference and what do you think of our beautiful campus?
My God, really beautiful campus in every way. So I can't even, I would love to come and spend some time here if I get a chance. So no question of that. But I wouldn't stand in that corridor with the breeze is blowing from both directions. So that's there. But no, lovely, but also a fantastic conference. It's just begun. But yesterday evening I was telling Leela she missed a great event. I never usually these opening events we all fall asleep. Yesterday it was so good. Each speaker was so well chosen because each speaker focused on a different aspect of Dr. Rangarajan's work and life, and Dr. Rangarajan has had such a variety of contributions that each speaker could. You could find speakers to speak on different aspects. They didn't just repeat the same thing. But of course the most impressive was his own talk. It's impossible to believe that he's still not ready to relax after all these years and all the amount that he's done. And his memory, he spoke without a scrap of paper, and he had such interesting stories to tell. And of course he has all that life behind him, so there is plenty to tell. But he did it so well that everyone was spellbound, and we could continue listening if he had carried on for some more time. So if the start was so good, and if that tradition is kept up, then the next 2 days also will be fantastic. I'm looking forward to attending this afternoon, for example, the gender session.
Sure. So thank you very much, Professor Alaka.
Thank you. This is, you preempted me, which was good because it's got me thinking about what I have to present.
Sure. All right.